Kintsugi, the Japanese art of broken pottery. Now, I took Japanese for about 6 years, so I'm pretty familiar with the culture. And one of the really interesting art forms is Kintsugi, which is basically repairing broken pottery to continue its usage. The word is comprised of two characters, kin meaning gold and tsugi meaning repair or join. So together it means to join something with gold. As I said previously, it's a traditional Japanese craft where ceramic is repaired with urushi, a specific type of lacquer and dusted with gold. Now, I say traditional and uniquely Japanese craft because it began in Japan, and at the time there wasn't anything like it. For the most part, when you think of reparative craft, you imagine hiding the broken lines like Western restorations do. However, that's what makes Kintsugi super interesting is the fact that it does not do anything to hide the breakage lines. Instead, with the usage of gold and other metals like silver, it highlights it and draws attention to it. When people want to fix their stuff, they don't want to see proof that it was broken. Surprisingly, however, kintsugi was so trendy at the time of its creation that people would purposely break their ceramic so that it could be repaired. Now, the origin of kintsugi is kind of vague in the sense that historians aren't completely sure where it came from. However, they do know that it dates between the late Azuchi Momoyama period and the early Edo period, which is around the late 16th century to early 17th century. And they thought this because of the usage of gold and the fact that tea ceremonies were very popular during this time. And the reason why tea ceremonies were very popular was because of a particular tea master, Sen no Rikyu, who made tea drinking very fashionable, and the market for tea bowls blew up. So why not have a blinged out tea bowl? One of the popular legends of how kintsugi came to be was the story of Shogun Ashikaga Yoshimasa, the military leader of Japan. The story goes that his favorite tea bowl broke, and since he came from China, he sent it back there for repairs. However, when it came back, he was horrified to see that there were metal staples holding the tea bowl together because that was the way the Chinese were repairing things at the time. Besides looking bad, the metal staples didn't actually fix the cracks, so the bowl was non-functional and would leak. Ashikaga then asked Japanese artisans to figure out a way to make something aesthetically pleasing while functional, thus creating kintsugi. Of course, this is just a legend and historians aren't sure if this is what actually happened, but it's a fun story nonetheless. The thing that makes kintsugi is a usage of urushi, which is a resin that comes from the lacquer tree. Due to the molecular nature of urushi, it has a structure similar to the structure of synthetic polymers, making it superior to natural resin whilst retaining the authenticity and greenness. Urushi also has unique preservative capabilities, making it resistant to symptoms of aging. Here are just some more facts about urushi that I already had in my research presentation. The most important thing here is that urushi is usually mixed with other substrates to give it certain texture or effect, and that depends on what the artist needs to do for the repair. Essentially, this allows it to be used for a wide variety of repair, like joining edges, filling holes, or reconstructing entire missing pieces. So the fun bit is actually with doing kintsugi, and real masters have to practice for years to be any good, but we're gonna blow through this entire process. The first step is having a broken piece of ceramic ware, usually a tea bowl, and it can be broken accidentally or purposefully. Before starting, the pieces need to be gathered and pre-assembled so the craftsman needs to know where each piece will go. Once that's done, urushi needs to be repaired. First, combine flour and water to make a paste. Then add raw urushi, also known as ki urushi, to the paste, and this usually comes in a tube. Once it's all mixed, you can use a tool like a toothpick or a palette knife and apply it to the break line on one piece. Then you hold the two pieces together and wiggle them until they can't wiggle anymore, and that's when it's stuck together perfectly. To create missing pieces, urushi is usually combined with powdered stone, tonoko, to create sabi urushi, a sturdy glue, and then you just remake whatever chunk was missing. If there's a lot of extra glue, you can scrape it off now or after the drying process is over. But the pieces should then be held together with a tape, dry, and placed inside a box called muro, which has a humidity level of 70 to 90% for about 2 weeks, but longer is better. After it dries, you can scrape off any excess glue and use sabi urushi to fill the cracks again. Leave that in the muro for 2 to 3 days. After it's dried, one needs to take a wet stone or charcoal stick to scrape off the excess urushi. Then using a thin brush, paint roiro urushi, a black urushi, onto the crack and leave this to dry for another 2 weeks. After it's dried, grind it down again with a whetstone or charcoal stick. Then you need to place urushi, a red urushi, on top of filter paper. Then twist the filter paper until the urushi begins to drip through. Use that filtered urushi to paint the crack again. Wait for it to dry a bit, but while it's still sticky, apply the gold powder using a silk cotton ball. Place the entire piece back into the noodle and allow it to harden for a couple days at least, but longer is better. Once it's dry, you can polish it with an oil. The philosophy of Kintsugi is very simple. It's about giving second life to objects in a more meaningful way. We currently live in a very disposable society where fast fashion and single-use plastics rule, and factories make everything, so objects are not particularly special. However, Kintsugi allows us to reuse the object even after it's broken, and the way that it is reformed makes each piece unique and special. It is also a way where we don't have to throw away things that are associated with an important memory. It is noted that Kintsugi is a craft directed by an ecological sense of responsibility care, in which the expression of repair functions as a powerful attraction, especially to a growing younger, greener population and surprisingly middle-class Japanese women. Kintsugi is also part of a philosophy called wabi-sabi, where wabi indicates austerity, simplicity, and the quiet life, and sabi indicates maturity, solitude, and naturalness. Wabi-sabi is linked to and derived from Shintoism, the Japanese religion, and later Zen Buddhist philosophy. It represents an acceptance of natural transience and imperfection, inviting contemplation and detachment rather than perfection. The ideals of wabi-sabi emphasizes the irreversibility of time and the ephemeral nature of us all. And Kintsugi is a craft that physically shows this by showing an aesthetic appreciation for imperfection. Kintsugi and wabi-sabi motions us to search for beauty in imperfection and to accept the natural cycle of life. For one, we can choose to fix broken objects instead of throwing them away, making new art or new functionalities out of them. And with each fix, the objects change from something mass-made to something unique and personal, which I think is the appeal of things like thrifting. But wabi-sabi doesn't just apply to art, but all aspects of life. For example, social norms force us to modify and conform to match their expectation, but wabi-sabi can be a way to respond to these ideals of perfection by allowing us to embrace imperfection within ourselves, not just the objects we own. One can see broken and repaired ceramics in Kintsugi as art pieces or as metaphors to living life. Either way, it's a path towards living a more meaningful and artistic life.